Lu Qingheng and I were reborn together. After rebirth, we both chose, without prior arrangement, never to meet again. In our past life, we were a couple in turbulent times. I supported him all along, helping him rise from a beggar to ultimately ascend the throne as emperor. He became emperor, I became empress. He wielded power with ruthless efficiency and extraordinary talent, ensuring the court remained exceptionally stable. He was also profoundly devoted. His harem remained empty, favoring only me. As husband and wife, we shared a lifelong, loving bond. But in this life, I no longer wish to accompany him, nor does he wish to accompany me. In our previous life, we died on the same day. By then, our eldest son, Lu Xiuji, had already ascended the throne years prior. We ourselves were frail and elderly, plagued by illness. Years of conquering the four corners left dozens of battle scars on both our bodies, along with hidden, incurable injuries within. In our middle and old age, these latent wounds flared up frequently, compounded by new ailments of the years. We always had at least 2 imperial physicians by our sides, addicted to painkillers. That day, I prepared 2 lethal poisons that would kill instantly upon contact with blood. I had us carried together, then offered him one. Lu Qingheng, do you want to die together? He calmly took the poison, a resigned smile spreading across his gaunt, sallow face. He gently placed the pill in his mouth, took a cup of water, and swallowed it before looking at me. Li Huiyu, let's not make plans for the next life, shall we? I nodded and swallowed my own pill, lying back relaxed on the soft couch, watching him quietly. Yes. No more meetings. We died in silence. When I opened my eyes again, I saw a ragged young beggar standing blankly before me, his eyes vacant as he stared at me. I instinctively glanced around, then turned to look at the tall vermilion gate behind me. The vermilion gate, weathered by time, bore the characters Li Mansion in letters as bright as new. Turning back to the young beggar, he still stared blankly at me. Almost instinctively, I realized I had been reborn at the very moment Lu Qingheng and I first met. He was a destitute beggar, I was the eldest Miss Li, sneaking away to evade her marriage. I remembered that day at the gate, feeling pity for him. I had given him a string of copper coins. Now, the beggar version of Lu Qingheng watched me. His gaze gradually shed its blankness, growing tender and profound. Soon, a faint smile curved his lips. His tattered beggar's clothes and disheveled hair could not conceal the presence radiating from him. Miss Li, please spare this humble one another string of coins. This time, I didn't give him that string. Instead, I handed him every last piece of silver I carried, a full 100 taels. Then I told him, from now on. And then, he vanished. His eyes darkened slightly. He took the silver pouch and walked away without a word. I knew he had been reborn too, but I only watched quietly as he walked away, disappearing into the crowd. Then I turned, pushed open the vermilion gate, and gazed at the familiar plants and trees within, my eyes filling with hot tears. My frail, helpless stepmother, how I miss you. I strolled back slowly. The flowers and plants in the manor were lush and thriving, yet not a single one was the peony my mother had loved. Once upon a time, the Li residence was filled with the delicate fragrance of peonies. Father and mother had vowed to be together for all eternity. Alas, human hearts are fickle. When I was 5, father broke his promise to mother and brought Su Wanyin, the fallen daughter of a noble family, into the mansion. Su Wanyin was cunning beyond measure. With feigned fragility, she drove my pregnant mother to miscarry and lose her life, then coaxed father into making her the legitimate wife. Thinking of this, a pang of resentment stung me. If I could start over, Why not be reborn while mother was still alive? I strolled toward the courtyard I remembered from my past life. Along the way, I passed many servants. Yet none would address me as Miss. For those who once addressed me as Miss had gradually vanished from this estate. Entering Shaoxiang courtyard, I found it overgrown with weeds. The aged doors and windows creaked and groaned as the autumn wind pushed against them. Standing by the courtyard pond, I gazed down at the emaciated girl reflected in the water. The solitary, cold figure in the depths returned my gaze with an eerie stare. Her features were delicate, yet her clothes were pieced together from my childhood garments. They were scarcely better than what beggars wore outside. I smiled coldly, thinking, how pitiful. Li Huiyu, you've really fallen low. I touched my sleeve, where the string of copper coins I'd given Lu Qingheng in my past life lay, combined with 100 taels I'd just given Lu Qingheng. It was every last bit of silver I'd secretly saved over the years. In my previous life, I'd given him only that string of coins, fleeing with the remaining 100 taels myself. But I was soon targeted by villains, robbed of my silver, and sold into a brothel. How foolish I'd been back then. Running away from a wedding in broad daylight through the front gate, what kind of pig-brained fool does that? I wasn't targeted by villains at all. I was clearly targeted by Su Wanyin. As for how this pig-brained fool later grew wiser, it all stems from my entanglement with that rascal Lu Qingheng. And my role in aiding his ascension to the throne? That had little to do with my own cleverness. My thoughts circled back as I surveyed the bare walls of Shaoxiang courtyard, forced to consider where my next meal would come from. Truth be told, my stomach was already singing the empty city strategy. The old pig-brained Li Huiyu would have fled at the first sign of trouble. But this is me now, a woman who survived countless plots in a past life, swept across the land alongside Lu Qingheng, and ultimately became the empress, second only to the emperor himself. Humph. My fingers brushed lightly against the string of copper coins tucked inside my sleeve, and a faint smile touched my lips. The greatest regret of my past life was that by the time I gained the power to return for vengeance, the Li Manor had already been razed by rebel forces long before I was sold into the brothel. My stepmother was raped and killed by the rebels, while my half-brother was torn apart and eaten by starving refugees. They suffered a painful death in their previous lives. But that was not enough for me. My hatred had nowhere to vent, and each passing day and night gnawed at my soul. Revenge must be swift, and I must do it myself. Torturing them slowly, like a cat toying with a mouse, is the only way to gradually erode the obsession in my heart. TSK. How twisted I am. That night, with the air dry and parched, I set a fire. Shaoxiang Manor went up in flames. The servants and guards panicked immediately, mobilizing nearly the entire household to fight the blaze. Not far away stood the young master's Wancheng Manor, separated only by a grove of maple trees. The crimson leaves were breathtakingly beautiful at that moment. But once the fire spread there, it would burn uncontrollably. If anything happened to the young master's Wancheng courtyard, the servants and guards would likely be beaten to death by their masters. But soon, they discovered with horror that Wancheng courtyard was also ablaze. Once the fire started in Wancheng courtyard, my stepmother naturally couldn't sit still. Fortunately, her precious son was away at private school, staying there for meals and lodging without returning. She stood outside the compound, her face grim as she watched the lavishly decorated building swiftly consumed by the flames, with everyone busy fighting the fire. Her usual throng of servants had thinned. I appeared silently behind her, pressing a slaughter knife, stolen from the kitchen, against her throat. She jolted, her legs trembling. I whispered softly in her ear, "If you want to live, don't make a sound. Come with me quietly." Su Wanin's face drained of color and terror. She tried to scream, but the sharp pain of the blade cutting into her flesh forced her to stifle it. The servants were frantically fighting the fire, yet none noticed anything amiss here. After all, they were mere commoners. their vigilance low. They could never have imagined that the timid, meek young mistress would threaten the main mistress with a kitchen knife, and under cover of the dark moon and howling wind, quietly lead her away right from under their noses. I brought Madame Su back to the main courtyard of the Li residence. The yard was deserted, all the maids and servants had gone out to help fight the fire. After all, with 2 courtyards ablaze, the fire had already consumed most of the Li estate and could easily spread to this side. I forced her into the master bedroom, bound her to a chair, stuffed a foul rag into her mouth, and then savored the look of fury on her face. Humph. Su Wanyin was indeed a sight to behold. Though already in her early 30s, she still possessed a pitifully fragile, helpless appearance. That look had won over the hearts of most men. How utterly infuriating. So damn annoying. I couldn't resist grabbing a kitchen knife and slicing it across her body. Stroke by stroke. The blade was razor sharp. I cut lightly, just enough to break the skin without severing tendons or bones. These wounds wouldn't kill anyone, but they hurt like hell. Wah! Su Wanyin's tears streamed down her face as she glared at me with bloodshot eyes, filled with hatred. I smiled sweetly at her, reassuring her. Just a little blood won't kill you. She grew even angrier, which delighted me. Then I noticed her table was laden with pastries. I retrieved a silver hairpin from her dressing table, one that had once belonged to my mother, and pierced each pastry with it. After confirming they were poison-free, I began eating them leisurely. I ate very slowly, chewing deliberately, just like Lu Qingheng. Su Wanyin watched me with terror, her eyes filled with confusion. When I was full, I pulled the filthy rag from her mouth. You seem to have a lot you want to ask me? Who are you? You're not Li Huiyu. Su Wanyin glared at me with a cold, piercing gaze, as if trying to see right through me. I chuckled softly. She was bound to be disappointed. I am Li Huiyu. I studied the tiny wounds covering her body, feeling a strange satisfaction, unable to resist. I slashed her several more times, watching the droplets of blood fall onto the floor. An inexplicable thrill rose within me. Su Wanyin did not disappoint. She was now in excruciating pain yet utterly lucid. You first burned your own courtyard to lure away the servants, then set fire to Wenchang Garden to draw me out. You must have planned this for a long time. I nodded. It did take a long time. After learning of her death in my previous life, my hatred had nowhere to vent. I could only replay in my mind, over and over, how I would make her wish she were dead if she were still alive. What exactly do you want? You hate me so much, yet you don't kill me. Instead, you bind me here. What are you scheming? I studied her carefully, feeling quite pleased. I want you to suffer a fate worse than death. Just like my mother, slowly drained of her vitality by the slow-acting poison you administered, watching helplessly as my younger siblings died in her womb, slowly perishing in despair. Upon hearing this, Su Wanyin's eyes finally flashed with the dread I'd been waiting for. So you knew all along. You've been holding back all this time. I smiled, a gentle smile, as twisted as Lu Qingheng's when he tortured enemy commanders. He taught me well, his influence runs deep. Su Wanyin stared at me with loathing and terror, forcing herself to remain composed. The fire will be extinguished soon. Once they return, you won't escape. Release me now, and I'll give you half my fortune to help you flee far away. Ha! I laughed at her foolishness. How could I possibly believe her? How could I ever let her go? That year, I accidentally discovered her poisoning my mother's medicine. But mother was already at death's door. She passed away the next day. Before she died, she told me to endure in silence. Not to tell father yet, because that foolish man of mine would never believe me if Su Wanyin shed even a single tear. Yet I remained his firstborn daughter, once the apple of his eye. No matter how much Su Wanyin despised me, she dared not truly harm me. Everything unfolded as she had anticipated. But after Su Wanyin's son, my father's only heir, Li Jing, was born, my father scarcely remembered me anymore. I grew increasingly invisible to him. Su Wanyin quietly cut back on my household's expenses, though life remained bearable. Until the year I turned 12, when my father was ambushed and killed by bandits. After handling the funeral arrangements, Su Wanyin stopped providing even basic sustenance. She dismissed every servant without exception. I endured it all in silence. Lu Qingheng once said, "If you don't explode in silence, you'll become twisted in silence." I suppose I belong to the latter. At 15, when I came of age, I overheard Su Wanyin planning to sell me as a concubine to a wealthy merchant suffering from syphilis. That's why I fled with the money earlier. In my past life, I hadn't gone far from the Li residence before a gang cornered me in an alley. After robbing me, they knocked me unconscious and sold me into a brothel. The next day, tens of thousands of northern refugees breached the city walls. Rebel forces led them in plundering food, burning, killing, and pillaging. Brothel madams habitually locked newly purchased girls in the basement, starving them for days before proper training. This practice, unknowingly, saved my life and those of several sisters. Calculating the days, tomorrow is precisely when the rebels and refugees will breach the city. That is why I am in such a hurry. Having just returned today, I must avenge this wrong. The fire burned until past midnight before dying down. When the maids serving in the main courtyard returned, exhausted, they discovered the mistress had been abducted by me, the eldest daughter. Oh my, madam! Su Wanyin's blood-soaked appearance was pitiful beyond words. The maids, seeing me press a cleaver against her throat, were terrified and dared not approach. The most anxious among them was Wang Laonyang, who usually attended Su Wanyin. "Miss, the mistress has treated you well. What are you doing?" I shot her a sidelong glance before prying open several boxes on the octagonal table. These are the money boxes I just found in this room, along with various land deeds and the indentured contracts of the servants. I pulled out Wang Laonyang's indenture. "Here. This is your indenture. Go gather all the servants in the manor to this courtyard. I'll return your indenture shortly." At this, Wang Ma immediately forgot about her mistress. She rushed out, bellowed a command, and summoned several nearby matrons. She ordered them to gather all the servants who had just been preparing to retire for the night into the courtyard. In front of everyone, I returned each indenture one by one. Along with each, I gave them 10 taels of silver as severance pay. Many wept with joy, while others looked at me with profound regret. Kneeling to kowtow. "Miss, we've wronged you these past years." I smiled faintly and motioned for them to rise. They stared at me blankly, seemingly captivated by some aura emanating from me. Human nature is profoundly complex. They were vulnerable yet resilient. Though they had avoided me out of fear of Su Wanyin's tactics, they never harmed or struck me. In fact, during the 2 years Su Wanyin cut off my rations, some of them would secretly toss sweet potatoes or stale steamed buns into the courtyard. Living in chaotic times, their own lives weren't easy either. Those might have been a feast for them. I watched them, my expression serene and calm. The refugees outside the city walls will attack tomorrow. With Lingqing's defenses, it will be difficult to hold. Gather some grain from the mansion and flee for your lives. Under Su Wanyin's murderous glare, they took their indentured contracts, silver, and whatever grain they could scavenge from the mansion and left. The vastly mansion soon became utterly empty. The household held little cash. After distributing severance to the servants, only a chest of banknotes and several land deeds remained. Seated at the octagonal table, I placed each deed one by one over the candle flame and burned them. I relished Su Wanyin's expression of heart-wrenching agony. Have you lost your mind? I ignored her. After burning the deeds, I began burning the banknotes. I wouldn't tell her that in the coming decades, these things would be utterly useless. The refugees and rebel armies were unstoppable, sweeping through like locusts wherever they went. Houses were burned to the ground, crops uprooted from the fields. Every shop, money house, and pawn shop shut down. Those bills became worthless. People had lost their minds. If the refugees couldn't live well, no one else would either. When I finished burning every last silver note, Su Wanyin's face turned ashen. Back then, my father was a respected merchant in Lingqing, and Su Wanyin came from a distinguished family. Alas, their fortune had fallen, and by her generation, they couldn't even afford food. My father admired her talent and pitied her. He'd only intended to give her a meal, but she clung to him relentlessly. Not content with winning my father's affection, she went on to kill my mother. Gone. Everything is gone. Ha 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 ha. Su Wanyin stared at the pile of ashes on the table. Her laughter mingled with tears. Everything she had fought for her entire life, abandoning her conscience and pride, was so easily consumed by my flames. But it's not over yet. I sat beside her, my smile radiant, innocent and romantic. But in Su Wanyin's eyes, I was a demon reaping souls. Li Jing is still at the private school. I'll take you out soon, away from the refugees and rebels. But he'll stay behind. At his age, with his fair skin and tender flesh, those starving refugees. Su Wanyin went mad. No. 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 That's not right. How did you know the refugees would attack? You're not that fool, Li Huiyu. Who are you? Watching her descend into madness, I suddenly found it tedious. She was far more fragile than any enemy general I'd slaughtered in my past life. I'd only done this much, and she was already on the verge of breaking. I watched her coldly, yet I couldn't recall what my mother looked like. Right. For me, decades had passed in between. I truly couldn't remember. The mansion grew increasingly quiet. Outside the city, the refugees and rebels had arrived. Their waves of angry shouts shattered the still night. Su Wanyin grew more terrified, begging me. Huiyu. Huiyu. I was wrong. I was wrong. There's a well by the door. I'll jump in soon to atone for your mother's sins. Hurry and find Jinger. Take him with you, he's your brother. You share the same blood. He even secretly brought you buns and pastries before. He never meant to harm you. Yes. Lu Jing is a good boy. My dead father and Su Wanyin raised him well. In those final years, besides the servants secretly tossing me sweet potatoes and steamed buns, Lu Jing would also occasionally sneak me pastries he'd saved for himself. But I seemed to have forgotten what Li Jing looked like. I closed my eyes, straining to search my memory. Su Wanyin broke down in despair, sobbing uncontrollably. Perhaps a mother's love for her child is immeasurable. She must have seen in my expression that I harbored little hatred toward Li Jing. So she summoned every ounce of strength, using the chair that bound her to topple the candlestick from the table. The flame ignited the tablecloth. Then her sleeve. She screamed shrilly, I'm going to atone for your mother. Go save my Jinger. Save him. The dry air fueled the flames, which swiftly engulfed her entire body before leaping to the Persian rug spread across the floor. Ah! Save him. Save him. The fabric burned too fast, and with no water in sight, her fate was sealed. I retreated to the courtyard, listening to the piercing screams echoing inside, a wave of endless sorrow washing over me. Human nature is too complex. I rushed to Li Jing's private academy that very night, only to find it completely deserted. Many homes in Lingqing lay empty, with only the elderly, weak, and infirm remaining, sitting in their houses with ashen faces. This scene made me think of one person. Qingheng. Only he possessed the capability to quietly relocate most residents in just over half a day. In my previous life, Qingheng knew I harbored a lingering emotional barrier. He understood my deeply complicated feelings toward Li Jing, so I could guess Li Jing had been taken away by him. Well then. Next, I'll cover his retreat. In my past life, we'd worked together like this 2 decades of tacit understanding, needing no detailed discussion. I climbed the city walls to find only a few veteran soldiers remaining. They stared blankly at the endless stream of refugees stretching beyond the city's edge. The young guards within the city must have been escorting Linqing's citizens to safety. The city was now empty. 56 elderly, weak, sick, and disabled remained unable to leave, while 34 veteran soldiers held their ground on the ramparts. I gathered the vulnerable and told them we would defend the city. We would buy time for their descendants to escape. They agreed readily, eyes brimming with tears as they prepared to burn their last breaths. Such is human nature. At dawn, we made many rice dumplings and boiled several pots of soybeans. We carried them to the city gates and tossed them out one by one. Soybeans were scooped and scattered down in ladlefuls. The refugees and rebels, who had been united in their intent to breach the city, instantly descended into chaos. Starving refugees fought fiercely over a single rice dumpling, some even biting chunks of flesh from others in the chaos. The rebel horses, drawn by the scent of soybeans, crowded together to eat them, ignoring their general's shouts and beatings. Hard times had driven the starving refugees to gnaw tree bark and eat wild grass, leaving even the war horses deprived of proper fodder. I ordered the veterans to draw their bows, attaching flammable cloth bundles soaked in lamp oil to the arrowheads. Once ignited, they loosed their arrows into the rebel ranks. Arrows ablaze rained down relentlessly upon the rebel ranks. Chaos erupted as the burning men collided wildly, setting more comrades alight. These rebels were so destitute they lacked armor, their ragged garments caught fire instantly. The air filled with the scent of burning flesh, stirring the dark desires within the starving refugees. Before long, our arrows were spent and the flames died down. The rebel leader and several of his junior commanders suffered severe burns, causing their morale to collapse. Rebels skilled with bows returned fire, but our position atop the high city walls gave us a natural advantage. Only a few of our men suffered minor injuries. This standoff lasted half a day. By noon, the sun blazed overhead, and the refugees were ravenous and parched. We once more hurled down rice dumplings and soybeans. Those who couldn't grab a dumpling crawled on the ground to eat the beans, trampled by horses as cries of anguish rose. Immediately, the refugees and rebels clashed, tearing at each other. Standing atop the city walls, I bellowed, "Those who obey me shall prosper, those who defy me shall perish." I lowered over a dozen large pots of porridge and several baskets of bowls from the ramparts. Instantly, the aroma of porridge filled the air. Those who came to receive the porridge would be treated as surrendered and spared. Those who fought over it would be killed without mercy. Anyone who slew 10 or more rebels could claim an acre of fertile land and a thatched cottage. The promises I painted offered the refugees a glimmer of hope. A tall, dark-skinned refugee snatched a blade from a rebel's hand. With swift, decisive strokes, he severed several rebel heads. Spotting him, I paused in surprise. An old acquaintance. With him here, I felt reassured. Meanwhile, the rebels began slaughtering the refugees. Some refugees went to fetch porridge, but before they could take a single sip, the rebel leader shot them dead with an arrow. The refugees went mad and began counterattacking the rebels. The rebel leader finally sensed trouble and shouted loudly, "Everyone stop! Don't listen to this woman's nonsense. Once we storm the city, everything inside will be ours." I sneered and shouted, "The rebels use the disaster victims as cannon fodder, then reap the rewards themselves. People, think carefully. After you used your own flesh and blood to help them breach other cities, Didn't they burn, kill, and plunder all along the way? They left you no grain, no way to survive. This is the rebels' standard tactic. Yes, we stormed the gates, yet they reap the rewards. A voice rang out from the refugees, and their pent-up fury erupted. Though frail and unarmed, they swarmed like wolves, tearing into the rebels. If survival weren't at stake, why would we ever ally with you rebels? Now that a path to life lies before us, you dare block our way? We'll fight you to the death. Refugees and rebels clashed for half a day. Manipulating hearts and minds is the very tool of those in power. I gazed down at the carnage below with pity in my eyes. All this was my doing. My hands were stained with mountains of corpses and seas of blood, just as in my past life. Such is the cruelty of those in power. Night fell once more. Both rebels and refugees had suffered heavy casualties. Yet the rebels were driven back by the refugees. Amidst the wails echoing across the fields, I led the elderly, the weak, and the infirm in a quiet retreat, hiding in the basement of a wealthy merchant's home. This merchant was also among the vulnerable, 78 years old, having lost a leg in his youth. Unable to travel far, he chose to stay behind rather than burden his children. His basement was vast, originally used for ice making, large enough to shelter us all. It was also well hidden, tucked beneath an artificial rock garden in his courtyard. We had sealed the entrance with mud and stones. The only way out was through an underground river channeled in for ice making. When we sealed the entrance, I did not enter the cellar, though they pleaded with me to stay. I smiled and told them, I still have work to do. Once it's safe, I'll come back to free you. Or you can swim out through the underground river yourselves. After bidding them farewell, I returned to the city gate. The displaced people were resting outside. I opened the gate for them. Fellow villagers, the original inhabitants have fled. This city is now yours. There are houses to live in, hot water to drink, and enough food to eat. Come in quickly. The numb-faced refugees rose one by one from the ground. Some tentatively took a few steps toward me. Seeing I was just a frail woman, they gathered their courage and walked through the gate. Before long, they ran excitedly through the entire city, then rushed back out to tell those outside. The city is empty. Come in quickly, this city is ours now. I stood once more atop the city walls and addressed them. The rebels won't give up. You must defend the city. The refugees no longer wished to be displaced. Within these walls, they found homes they liked to live in and food to fill their stomachs. Most crucially, vast fields lay behind the city, their crops growing lush and green. Yes, we must defend the city, they declared. We cannot let those bastards in. They only burn, kill, and plunder. They won't let us live in peace. Right. We must not let them in. So we shut the gates and prepared boiling oil. When the rebels turned back, what awaited them was a pack of bloodthirsty tigers, fearless and determined to defend their homes. The rebels attacked for 2 days before collapsing in defeat. Their leaders were slaughtered to the last man, and the captives were put to work in the fields. I released the elderly, the weak, and the infirm. Seeing their homes now occupied by the displaced people, their expressions were deeply conflicted. This was the best possible outcome. I nodded. The civil war between the displaced people and the rebels had decimated their numbers. Now the displaced people numbered only a third of what they once were. The wealthy merchant's residence was called the Qin Manor. I had the refugees vacate it for the elderly, infirm, and disabled to live in. The refugees held them in deep respect and none objected. Simultaneously, I retrieved the girls who had been sold into brothels and locked in their basements, assigning them to care for these vulnerable people. Several days later, the settled refugees sent their leader to negotiate with me. This leader, Lin Mu, was originally a hunter. After becoming a refugee, his skills proved invaluable. Having saved many lives, he rose to become their chief. I met Lin Mu in a tea house. He was a young man, about 20 years old, standing over 6 feet tall with dark skin and handsome features. His eyes lit up when he saw me, though he seemed somewhat reserved. "Young lady, despite your age, you don't seem like an ordinary person." I looked at him and smiled faintly. I had seen this man in my previous life. He was the leader of the southern rebel forces, later subdued by Qingheng and becoming one of his formidable generals. "You flatter me." I wasn't one for modesty. Had I not stirred up trouble in that battle, they would have breached the city walls that very morning. Following the rebels' usual pattern of pillaging and burning, the outcome would have mirrored my past life, a thriving city reduced to ruins. Yet now, the city remains intact, merely welcoming its new master while maintaining its orderly rhythm. Everyone cherishes this rare piece. I sought you out today to request the return of half the original inhabitants. This city is vast, our current numbers wouldn't even fill half of it. Moreover, among our survivors, there are mostly men, you understand what I mean. His gaze was intense, so much so that I even suspected he harbored improper thoughts toward me. I nodded. Some natives will likely return. But if you wish to earn their goodwill and marry their daughters, you must show sincerity, abundant sincerity. We understand. We won't frighten them. We don't want to be displaced people, nor do we want to create new ones. I gave him an approving look. You are all righteous and responsible. Naturally. Those in power win hearts and minds not by demanding they keep promises, but by shackling them with dignity and faith, just as men always bind women with chastity. After a long chat with Lin Mu, he offered to escort me back to the Qin residence. Old Jiang, the gatekeeper, shot him a cold glare. Realizing he wasn't welcome, Lin Mu scratched his nose and left. Once he was gone, old Jiang pulled me aside and whispered, "Little you, that fellow had a strange look in his eyes just now. From now on, if anything comes up, have him deal with us old folks." I giggled and nodded. Grandpa Jiang really cares about me. Of course. If we old folks don't look out for you, who will? You're a clever little thing, most people can't outwit you. But you're still a girl at heart. Physically, you can't match men by nature. So keep your distance from them. The veterans had ways to contact the departed natives. Those willing to return were common folk. Wealthier merchants or scholars had already bought courtyards in other cities to settle down. This turned out for the best. I'd finally put that chapter behind me and planned to find a place to train properly. True, my mind had sharpened under Liu Qingheng's guidance, but my true strength lay in martial arts. With rebel uprisings erupting everywhere and refugees fleeing in chaos, this turbulent era will persist for over a decade. Tough battles lie ahead, so honing my martial skills comes first. The veterans were deeply reluctant to see me leave, but my lingering attachment to Lingqing has faded. There's no reason for me to stay here anymore. Yet I hadn't anticipated that the moment I stepped through the city gates, Lin Mu would rush after me, blocking my path with obvious displeasure at my solitary departure. "Miss Li, in these chaotic times, the outside world is perilous. You shouldn't venture out." I regarded him silently. Master Jiang was right, this fellow had taken a fancy to me. But I wasn't his destined partner. "Mind your own business." My retort left him speechless, clearly angered yet unsure how to vent his frustration. After all, we'd barely interacted before, our only exchange had been that incident at the tea house. Seeing my resolve, he stubbornly declared, "Then I'll accompany you." Just then, a snow-white-clad youth stood at the base of the city wall. His voice icy, "She has company. You, go cool off somewhere else." Hearing this, I turned in shock toward the youth. "Lu Qingfeng? Didn't we agree to never meet again in this lifetime?" What the hell is he playing at? Lin Mu frowned, glaring at Lu Qingfeng with hostility rising in his eyes. Who is he? Me? Humph. An old acquaintance. Lu Qingheng rolled his eyes in exasperation. Why not just say ex-husband? Ex-husband? Husband from a past life? Well. The air was thick with sourness now. 2 vinegar vats had inexplicably been overturned. Your ex-husband? Lin Mu stared at me with wide, incredulous eyes. You look barely of age. How could you possibly have an ex-husband? I don't. I shot Lu Qingheng a sidelong glance. Born into a noble family, he was now a fallen young master. Freshly groomed. His features, framed by crisp white robes, grew sharper. His aloof, icy demeanor gradually overlapping with the emperor he'd been in a past life. At this moment, the youth radiating coldness eyed me with a mocking smile. That look made me feel as if he'd caught me red-handed. I laughed bitterly. This lifetime, I truly wanted nothing more to do with him. Living with someone as calculating as a sieve was simply too exhausting. So I snapped at Lin Mu. Just like you, nothing but a swarm of reckless butterflies. After speaking, I couldn't bear to look at Lu Qingheng's expression and immediately headed out of the city. Mainly, I felt a bit guilty. In my past life, he found me in the basement of a brothel and repaid me with a string of copper coins. But I played the snake and met the stick, demanding he pledge himself to me, or else I would pledge myself to him. In short, the shameless one in my past life was me. Humph. Lu Qingheng snorted derisively. But he didn't call me out. He only stopped Lin Mu when he tried to follow me. At that moment, Lin Mu had recently led the displaced people to victory over the rebel army and was riding high on his newfound glory. Facing Lu Qingheng's slight frame, he showed no fear, charging forward with a punch. Little did he expect that in the blink of an eye, Lu Qingheng had knocked him flat on the ground. The thud of a heavy body hitting the ground reached my ears. I glanced back and couldn't help but shoot Lu Qingheng a look of contempt. How old is he? Still acting like this over a woman? Doesn't he feel any shame? Humph. He laughed bitterly, his gaze teasing as he looked at me, about to say something. But Lin Mu seized the opening to counterattack, dragging him down to the ground with him. The two wrestled together. Humph. This time, it was my turn to laugh. Lu Qingheng was still young, having lived in poverty for years, leaving him in poor physical condition. Even with some martial arts training, he stood no chance against the bull-like adult Lin Mu. TSK. Serves him right for being so cocky. Outside the city gates lay a vast grassland stretching toward distant mountain ranges. Now deep into autumn, the golden grass had been trampled to shreds by refugees and rebels. Where I'd ordered veterans to fire oil-soaked rockets, vast patches of scorched earth lay charred black. Fortunately, the refugees were so numerous that a single kick extinguished each fire, preventing greater casualties. Tens of thousands of refugees and rebels perished in this battle. Even now, nearly half a month later, figures still dragged rotting corpses to the grassland's edge for burning. Black blood stained the ground. Swarms of flies and maggots wriggled. Crows cawed incessantly. A nauseating stench hung in the air. I felt as though tens of thousands of vengeful spirits were glaring at me with malice, demanding to devour my flesh and suck my blood. Alas! I let out a long sigh. Then, with deep reverence, I knelt on the ground and bowed my head 3 times in solemn tribute to the souls lost this time. I felt guilt in my heart toward them, but if time could be turned back to that day, I would still do the same. First, the city's resources were limited. Second, unless the rebels were eliminated, the people would never find peace. As I knelt, Lu Qingheng and Lin Mu ceased their struggle. Lifting their skirts, they knelt beside me. Lu Qingheng pressed his palms together. The reincarnation chant flowed from his lips with clarity and ease, as if he had recited it thousands upon thousands of times. The guards on the city walls were selected from among the displaced refugees. Perched high on the ramparts, they stared at us with cold, hard eyes. They didn't recognize Lu Qingheng, but they all knew me. During that battle, they hadn't realized I was the one stirring up the storm. But when the days grew calm and their minds cleared, fear, even resentment, took root in their hearts. Because among the dead refugees were their own loved ones. After kowtowing 3 times, I hoisted my bundle and strode toward the distant mountains without a backward glance. Lu Qingheng recited the Rebirth chant but did not follow, instead continuing to block Lin Mu. Why are you stopping me? We can compete fairly. You are unworthy. I entered the deep mountains, the path strewn with bleached bones. Meanwhile, across the central plains, the Yellow River burst its banks. The Yangtze's waters surged inland, and the Guangdong region lay barren for 1,000 miles, yielding not a single grain. Compounding this, desertification on the grasslands worsened. With no grass left for cattle and sheep, nomadic tribes were forced southward. The incompetent Lu royal clan, offering no resistance, relocated the capital to Ganling. Natural disasters and man-made calamities, too many had perished in these years. I sat cross-legged on a mountain rock, practicing breathing exercises. Yet my heart refused to settle. Did heaven send us back to this era because it deemed our past lives insufficiently virtuous? What then must we do? In the mountains, arduous cultivation knows no days or nights. 2 years passed, and my internal energy and martial arts cultivation reached 80% of my former peak. Master Yu Li, Lu Qingheng's teacher, once said, in terms of intellect, 10 of me couldn't match Lu Qingheng. But in martial arts aptitude, 10 Lu Qinghengs couldn't surpass me. Amidst the mountain's austere solitude, I descended every month or so to procure supplies and inquire about current affairs. I heard that Lin Mu had assembled an army of 10,000 men marching north to join forces with General Qingheng, the commander defending the frontier, to jointly repel the invading grassland tribes. In my past life, Lin Mu was the leader of the southern rebel forces. Yet in this lifetime, he actually supported the imperial court. Had Lu Qingheng not deceived me, I would never have believed it. Lu Qingheng himself has abandoned his former ways. Instead of rallying rebel forces, he now travels the land, managing flood control, aiding disaster relief, and persuading various armies to surrender. Today, he stands as the foremost noble before Emperor Lu's throne, surrounded by many of his former advisors. Emperor Lu, impressed by his political maneuvering, sought to wed his eldest princess to him. This only provoked him to shave his head, retreat to a temple, and devote himself to Buddhist practices, turning his back on worldly affairs. Furious, Emperor Lu, despite the court's corruption and lack of capable officials, made 3 visits to the hermitage, pleading for his return. I couldn't help but feel a chill for Emperor Lu. He kept a vicious dragon by his side, one capable of devouring him at any moment. Yet he sought to bind this dragon firmly to himself through marriage. Little did he know, the dragon was merely a tool he wielded to stir up chaos in the realm. Emperor Lu's delicate daughter was, in his eyes, nothing more than a little white rabbit caged away, so foolish it was painful to behold. Just like me in the early days of my past life. Damn! Such unhappy memories are best forgotten. I stayed on the mountain for 3 full years. When winter came, I hunted 6 white foxes, skinning them to sew my clothes. I also tamed the leader of the wild horses in the mountains, a proud, great black stallion. Before the winter snow fell, I rode the black stallion north, straight to the military camp. This lifetime, Lu Qingheng made different choices than before. He entered the court to reform the corrupt government, using imperial power to quell internal strife and preemptively control the natural and man-made disasters of my past life. It had to be him. It had to be him. At last, I wouldn't have to raise my sword against my own people. Instead, I marched to the true battlefield to defend our borders. When I found Lin Mu, the steppe tribes had already reached the Yellow River. Due to the winter cold, both sides agreed to a truce. The Yellow River became the boundary, with each side refraining from interference. Lin Mu, now a great general, was both surprised and a mix of awkwardness and smugness upon seeing me. For he was already accompanied by another beauty, and he assumed I had come to join him. In the bright hall of the general's residence, I sat in the guest seat sipping tea. Lin Mu held the small hand of his newlywed wife, Gu Yanxi, and looked at me with a proud, teasing expression. Miss Li, I am now the Xianwei general, and as I have a lawful wife, you can only be my concubine. Pfft. I couldn't hold it in, I sprayed my tea everywhere. His words made me understand firsthand what it felt like to be disgusted to the point of wanting to vomit. His wife, Gu Yanxi, recoiled in disgust from the spattered tea. Her delicate face twisted in displeasure as she shot me a cold stare. What kind of uncouth woman are you? Had the general not spared me out of old affection, this lady would never have consented to your entry into our household. Gu Yanxi, the cousin of Marshal Qingheng, had always been haughty and proud. She'd already felt humiliated marrying Lin Mu, a commoner. Then, not long after their wedding, I arrived. With Lin Mu's dimwit brain, he certainly couldn't say anything to please her. Now he was clearly displeased with me. TSK. I pulled a handkerchief from my sleeve to press against my mouth, glancing at Lin Mu with a mocking smile. With Lu Qingheng's brilliance setting the standard. Where do you get your confidence? Am I, Li Huiyu, supposed to rush over to be your concubine? At the mention of Lu Qingheng's name, Lin Mu's face darkened. What does Lu Qingheng have that surpasses me, besides his underhanded tricks? I snorted derisively. Saying nothing, Lin Mu was instantly rendered speechless by my expression, which mirrored Lu Qingheng's to a T. No wonder he'd spent all these years being bossed around by Lu Qingheng. Gu Yanxi's eyes flickered as she studied me thoughtfully. Aren't you here to seek refuge with the general? I nodded. Tomorrow, I'll cross the Yellow River to the Mongol camp. Over the next 3 days, during daylight hours, you'll sound the attack horns, sail to the river's center, and launch fire arrows at their encampment. Remember, do not set foot ashore. On the night of the 3rd day, bring flammable oil and launch a surprise night raid. Then, seeing Lin Mu's face suddenly grow solemn, I smiled gently. This is your only chance. If you can't seize the military merit, it won't be yours. Understand? Gu Yanxi sneered. You, a woman, want to cross the Yellow River? And you dare order us to deploy troops? Do you think this is a child's game? Shut up! Lin Mu abruptly cut her off with cold detachment, his gaze growing more intense as he stared at me, as if recalling something through my eyes. Are you certain? Is that even a question? Looking at Lin Mu's dark face, I missed Lu Qingheng more than ever since my rebirth. I closed my eyes briefly and sighed deeply. Very well. Come if you wish. With that, I rose to take my leave, gliding away amidst their complex gazes. But I knew he would send troops. First, the impression I left him 3 years ago ran deep. Second, his greatest flaw was his reckless thirst for glory. I told Lin Mu we'd cross the river tomorrow, but that night I slipped into black robes. Alone in a small boat, I reached the opposite shore under cover of darkness and headed straight for the Mongol camp. Fire! Someone set it ablaze. After igniting several outer tents, I slipped away silently. Finding a large tree nearby, I climbed up and rested there through the night. Waking the next morning, I sat in the tree munching on dry buns while watching the Mongol cavalry drill. The Mongol cavalry truly lived up to their reputation as unmatched under heaven. Moreover, The Mongols themselves were tall and sturdy, their sinewy bodies covered in a layer of fat. Physically, they far surpassed the Han Chinese. Cavalrymen carried dried meat, rode fine steeds, bore bows and arrows, and wielded curved swords. Their guerrilla speed was formidable, the Han army was no match for them. Yet these steppe warriors had a weakness, they were essentially landlubbers. Thus, at noon under the blazing sun, Lin Mu rallied his naval forces. They launched fire arrows from the river toward the Mongol encampment, forcing the Mongols to retreat and break camp. Seeing his shots missed their mark, Lin Mu had no choice but to withdraw his men back to camp. I had spent the entire day perched in a tree. The winter chill was biting. But thankfully, the fox fur I'd brought served as a warm, comfortable undergarment beneath my black robes. Night fell again. I quietly climbed down the tree, stretched my limbs in an unseen spot, then crept back toward the military camp. Moving like a ghost, I headed straight for one of the horse pens. They had several pens, I chose the most secluded one. Horses sleeping is quite interesting. If it were just one horse, it would surely sleep standing up. If it's a herd, a few will stand guard while most lie down. Because horses sleep on watch, ever vigilant. Suddenly, several strings of projectiles rained down from the sky, followed by a deafening crackle that shook the entire paddock. The horses whinnied in terror, leaping and dodging in panic, only to trample those lying down. The horses went wild. Chaos erupted across the paddock, and many fine steeds were injured. I sighed inwardly, what a pity. The commotion immediately drew a large contingent of guards. The paddock filled with the curses of Mongols. While they were calming the horses, I slipped to another paddock and set fire to its hay shed. Since firecrackers were scarce, I only burned the hay sheds at subsequent paddocks. By the time I'd raided every paddock, dawn had broken. That night, the Mongols sounded their enemy alert repeatedly. Soldiers vigilantly searched the perimeter of the encampment, consciously bolstering defenses around the central tent. I glanced at that main tent, raised an eyebrow, then crept back up the large tree. Finding a comfortable position, I closed my eyes and slept. During the day, I stayed hidden in the tree while Lin Mu continued rallying the naval forces to harass the enemy. If they couldn't land, they'd sail their fleet around the river, causing trouble. The point was to stay afloat and keep them on edge. That night, when I slipped back into the Mongol camp, I clearly noticed increased patrols around their stables. I quietly knocked out 3 men, stole their bows and rations, then found another tree. From there, I targeted the patrols outside the Khan's main tent. 1 arrow, 1 head. I only had 30 arrows total. After firing them all, I returned to my original tree to sleep. That night, the entire Mongol camp burned with torches as every soldier hunted for the assassin. Thus, I spent 2 days here. On the 3rd day, broad daylight, I relied on my agile lightness skills and formidable martial arts to boldly stride into the camp, killing several men. After triggering a wave of pursuers, I charged into their stables, mounted their prized stallion, and galloped away. If they stopped chasing, I'd sneak back to steal other horses. That night, tens of thousands of Han soldiers crept up from the Yellow River. They carried bows and arrows coated in flammable oil. Once lit, the arrows rained down like hail into the Mongol tents. By the time the Mongol soldiers reacted, their movements were slightly sluggish after 3 days and nights with barely any sleep. As they frantically searched for horses, I had already quietly opened all the gates to the stables. A dozen wild stallions led by their leader charged into the paddocks, bullying every horse in sight before turning tail and bolting. How could the domesticated horses endure such provocation? They launched a frenzied pursuit. I couldn't help but marvel at the wild stallion leader's prowess, truly worth the half year I spent taming him. As the deafening battle cries erupted from both sides, I had already severed the Khan's head and held it high. Your Khan is dead. Surrender and live. This battle marked our dynasty's first victory over the Mongols. The Mongols were strong and resilient, even without horses. After 3 days and nights without proper rest, and knowing their Khan was dead, our soldiers still had to fight 2 against 1. Yet even such a tragic victory was worthy of being recorded in history. For the Mongols retreated, leaderless. They had no choice. They retreated 300 li to the northeast. And we reclaimed 1/3 of the cities. Though the Mongol troops remained fierce and skilled in battle thereafter, they were no longer a formidable threat. Their Khan was dead, and establishing a new ruler would require time and internal strife, granting the Liu dynasty a respite. The war concluded in the 4th month of the following year. From the start of hostilities last November to now, 5 months had passed. During these 5 months, I garrisoned in the newly recaptured frontier stronghold, assisting in several minor skirmishes. Whenever the Mongols installed a new Khan, I would find a way to eliminate him. The Mongol royal family harbored a deep, seething hatred for me, yet they could do nothing to stop me. Later, I enlisted the aid of skilled warriors. At the cost of a single blade wound, I struck down their last remaining prince. From then on, the grassland tribes scattered into fragments, growing increasingly weak and gradually retreating deep into the steppe. During this period, whenever there was no fighting, I commanded surplus troops to devote themselves entirely to reclaiming wasteland and expanding cultivated areas. Anyone who dared to oppose me faced nothing more than the swift swing of my blade. Thus, by the time Liu Qingheng began resettling the refugees who had fled south, there was already sufficient grain north of the Yellow River to sustain them. In recent days, Lin Mu's wife learned of my actions. When she saw me, her initial haughtiness and awkwardness had vanished. Yet she didn't treat me with the mix of reverence and fear shown by the soldiers. Instead, she transformed into a clingy little vixen. Sister Li, how's my 5 animals exercise looking? Give me your honest opinion. Sister Li, I bought you a new dress, that soft green you love. Sister Li, I made you a dessert. Sister Li, I watched this woman clinging to me like a flower butterfly with unbearable headache. Hadn't she noticed her dear husband's face twisted with jealousy? Yan Shi, you've never made me desserts. Never performed the 5 animals exercise for me. And all my clothes are bought by the steward. Ah. Well, I couldn't help but shed a tear of heartache for him. With the border secured and no warfare expected for at least 5 years, I had no intention of lingering here long. Yet as I prepared to depart, I unexpectedly received a letter from Liu Qingheng. This was the very first letter he had ever written to me in this lifetime. My beloved, the northern lands are just beginning to turn green, while here in Jiangnan the flowers bloom like brocade. Should you return south in early May, the peaches, plums, and bayberries will all be ripe and sweet. Your admirer, Hung. Pft. The only thought that flashed through my mind was, this man must be ill. In my past life, I made it clear I wanted nothing to do with him. Yet in this life, he keeps popping up to remind me of his existence. Sigh. I suppose I must make a trip to Ganling after all. With the foreign lands now pacified, he likely intends to overthrow the old dynasty and establish a new government. When I shared this with Lin Mu, he was so startled he couldn't speak. Only after a long while did he stammer out, "You're going to rebel?" But the problem is, he's the general Liu Qingheng put forward. Everyone assumes he's in cahoots with Liu Qingheng. Now that I've confessed our rebellion plans to him, the former leader of the southern rebels from my past life has actually started to fear. I patted his shoulder, understanding his predicament. Yanxi is 3 months pregnant. I won't breathe a word of this to her. But you'd better keep your own mouth shut too. He glared at me angrily. My own wife? Why should you care? Get out if you must. But he called me back midway. You're still a woman. With that bastard Lu Qingheng shielding you. Don't push yourself too hard. I waved him off, mounted the glossy-coated wild stallion, and bid farewell outside the general's residence. I value my life. Towns north of the Yellow River lay desolate from population loss, while southern cities bustled with overcrowded throngs. Ganling, renamed Nanjing, flourished in unparalleled splendor. All said, the capital teems like the sea, its lights burning deep into the night. When I reached the gates of Ganling, Lu Qingheng was already waiting at the small tea stall outside. He had grown taller and more robust, his handsome features always drawing the attention of passers-by. I patted the big black horse, sending it back to the mountains. Reluctant, it still walked away, glancing back every 10 steps. I sat down at the tea stall, glaring at Lu Qingheng with icy eyes. On my journey south, I faced 12 assassination attempts and was poisoned 5 times in inns. I captured several attackers. When questioned, they claimed, "You're the regent's consort, some find you unworthy." This man unilaterally declared me married. He lowered his face, scratched his nose, and dared not meet my gaze. The dangerous ones? I intercepted them all. Blame my face for being too alluring, aristocratic ladies go wild for me. Just a friendly reminder, if you don't guard this fine husband of yours, he'll be buried under a swarm of mad bees and wild butterflies. I knew perfectly well those attackers were deliberately let through, nothing but petty thieves with no real skill. His shadow guards followed me near and far. Just like in my past life, I was protected so tightly I couldn't breathe. Yet danger lurked at every turn. Now that I've reached the realm of martial arts master, his arrangements only served to remind me how utterly foolish I was in my previous life. Played like a puppet in his hands. This is one of his most suffocating traits, his unparalleled need for control. Knowing I disliked it, he stubbornly refused to change. I took a deep breath. Didn't we agree this lifetime wouldn't involve each other? There are plenty of fish in the sea. Once I help you complete your grand undertaking, we'll go our separate ways. Deal? He sighed. Then this grand undertaking isn't so important after all. His eyes suddenly brightened, looking at me with pleading intensity. Let's have I born sooner. With his talent, he could take charge by his teens. Not happening. We fell out, and he stormed off. When I entered the city, he bought another stick of candied hawthorn berries and slinked back. Shamelessly. I'm sorry. I was wrong. I refused his berries and sneered. No, you're not wrong. In my past life, his apologies always came just as swiftly. I'd always soften and forgive him, but his regrets were as worthless as a fart. Useless. I still followed him back to the regent prince's mansion because he was injured. Truthfully, the moment I saw him, I caught the heavy scent of blood on his body. At the time, fueled by anger and his seemingly normal demeanor, I dismissed it. But when I refused his candied hawthorn, he collapsed straight toward me, unconscious. Only then did I realize his entire body was burning hot. In the regent prince's main chamber, I stared at the deep, bone-exposing knife wounds on his back, my heart aching. After the court physician examined him, he shook his head. I told him to rest properly after last night's assassination attempt. With this fever today, he should be recuperating indoors, otherwise, these wounds could easily become infected. But he wouldn't listen. He went out to wait at the city gate first thing this morning. Your Highness, the regent truly cherishes you. Humph. A ploy to win sympathy. Yet even knowing it was a ploy, my heart still ached. What can I do? He holds a place in my heart. He lay unconscious for a full day and night, his fever raging. I kept vigil beside him, day and night. During that time, sitting by his bedside, I watched him silently, quietly revisiting the days of my past life. As a couple in turbulent times, We were undoubtedly fortunate. Not only did we grow old together, but we also held high positions. When did I first begin to wish we wouldn't meet again in the next life? Was it when I was pregnant, and he rushed off to battle? Alone in the deep mountains. I gave birth to our eldest son, Lu Yi. Immediately after delivery, I had to fight off wild beasts. Was it when he was gravely wounded protecting Yi? Had I arrived a moment later, I would have only been able to bury them both. When our daughter Lu Yan was born, the newborn was snatched by enemies. Rescued barely alive, she remained frail and sickly her entire life. After he ascended the throne, court officials eagerly recommended their daughters, hoping he would enjoy the pleasures of many wives. He resolutely rejected all suggestions, leaving the harem empty. Yet palace maids still sought to climb the dragon bed. Or in his old age, when his old wounds flared, leaving him in agony? Countless, inarticulate, and endless trivial matters. A lifetime is too long. I don't hate him, nor do I resent him. It's just that in our past life, being together was too exhausting. It felt like we never had a single day of peace. So, I want to let him go, and let myself go too. Actually, I wanted to let you go from the very beginning. Lu Qingheng awoke, glanced at me once, and knew exactly what I was thinking. But when I see other men trying to get close to you, I can't stand it. Seeing me silent, he swallowed hard and pondered. This lifetime, I won't be emperor. I'll find a capable one to take the throne, then retire with you. How about that? I shook my head, utterly heartless. I find being alone quite pleasant, no burdens whatsoever. Even if I died tomorrow, I wouldn't worry about dragging my family down. But I'll always be thinking of you. He sighed. I nodded. I'll be thinking of you too. Lu Qingheng recuperated at the mansion for half a month, and I stayed by his side day and night. Just like in my past life, I didn't need to meddle in political affairs, but I had to observe them. My primary responsibility was his safety. Over those 2 weeks, I intercepted 5 waves of assassins, each more vicious than the last. No wonder he had such heavy secret guard protection and had been so badly wounded last time. At the same time, I once again witnessed the trouble his beautiful women brought him. Countless noble ladies visited the ailing regent prince under various pretexts during those 2 weeks, so many I lost count. As the regent prince's consort, I turned them away. But this only stirred widespread resentment. Days later, the gatekeeper delivered an invitation, a flower-viewing banquet personally written by the eldest princess. Such gatherings, where women scheme against each other behind closed doors, are truly distasteful. Lu Qingheng remarked. It's merely a diversion tactic. Someone, frustrated by their failed assassination attempts, can no longer contain themselves. I understood. You always insisted I spare lives and send them back. Was this the day you meant? Should I still go? The next morning, after being dressed for an hour by the matrons of the household, I was finally stuffed into a carriage, resplendent in ceremonial robes, bound for the peony garden outside the city for the banquet. The peony garden, as its name suggests, was a garden filled with peonies. In the south, peonies were not particularly common. After all, with flowers blooming year-round, there was little reason to fixate on any single variety. Accompanied by the tall maid Lu Qingheng had thrust upon me, I was ushered into the garden. The riot of colors that met my eyes left a bitter taste in my mouth. The garden boasted a vast array of peony varieties, all brought south by the nobility when the court relocated. Displaced people were starving, resorting to cannibalism during their southern flight. Yet these nobles could relocate an entire vast peony garden. And the peony garden was just one among many such gardens. Adjacent to it lay numerous other aristocratic private estates. In the garden's waterside pavilion, A group of radiant young women gathered. One of them glanced over with a look of contempt. That's the regent's consort. She's not even that attractive. And yet, someone like her dares monopolize the regent, forbidding him from taking concubines. TSK. The pavilion was some distance away, and ordinary people couldn't make out the conversation. But I could hear every word clearly. That's the downside of having too much inner strength. I dug my fingers into my ears and found a quiet spot to sit. My thoughts raced. When in my past life did I ever stop him from taking concubines? I gathered a dozen beauties for him myself. He refused them, yet spread rumors that I was jealous. TSK. I'm more wrong than Doi. The princess is arriving. With a loud shout from a eunuch. Today's main character made her grand entrance. I lifted my gaze to see a golden carriage adorned with agate and jade slowly halt before the peony garden. A jade-like hand emerged from the golden silk curtains at the carriage's front, resting on a palace maid's wrist. A woman clad in court attire, her skin whiter than snow, was gently assisted down from the carriage by the maid. We pay our respects to Her Highness the Princess. So this was Lu Yang, the princess who had once sought to marry Lu Qingheng. Truly a woman of such beauty. As if stepped out of a painting. Yet the one who sent assassins after me, at least 10 waves of them, was none other than her. What a venomous beauty! Spotting me, Lu Yang approached. Fragrant scents wafted as she approached, her eyes sparkling like stars. Yet the palace maid beside her glared at me, her voice sharp and cold. How dare you? You see the princess and do not kneel. What punishment do you deserve? I replied helplessly. I am new here and unfamiliar with court etiquette. I beg your forgiveness, princess. Guards! Drag this treasonous woman out and beat her to death. The palace maid raved like a mad dog. Yet the princess stood watching me, serene as a lotus. Only a flicker of cold, ruthless intent passed through her icy eyes. Guards obeyed the command and approached to restrain me. With a swift sidestep, I appeared behind the princess and plucked a golden hairpin from her bun, pressing it against her slender neck. By the imperial authority, no one could have imagined I would openly defy the throne. The princess clearly hadn't expected this either. Yet she suppressed her fear without panicking, a quality that earned my respect. Still in her tender youth, her voice remained soft and delicate. She said, "You defy the imperial authority. No one can save you now. The regent's days of privilege end today. Henceforth, he shall be nothing more than a dog kept by this princess." I was utterly astonished. So you knew your father used you as a decoy to lure me to this banquet, a ploy to draw the tiger away from its lair. His aim was to remove me, a peerless master, from his side, to utterly cripple him. The princess raised her head haughtily. Yes. It seems you hold no weight in your father's eyes either. I sighed with pity, leaning close to whisper in her ear, "Do you truly believe someone as cunning as Lu Qingheng would fail to see through such an obvious scheme?" "Fool," I continued softly. "He was merely waiting for an opportunity. And that opportunity, you just handed him. Now, everyone knows your father sent assassins to kill him." Lu Yang wasn't entirely foolish. Her body stiffened instantly, her face twisted with regret and despair. Then, she saw the tall maid who had been concealed behind me step out of the shadows. "I have devoted myself to the state, saving lives in disasters, controlling floods, and quelling internal unrest. My achievements are remarkable. Yet your majesty cannot tolerate this prince, repeatedly sending assassins. Now you even remove my beloved wife who protects me, seeking to kill me outright. Such an emperor is unworthy of this prince's loyalty." He removed the ribbon from the maid's hair, readying it. He tore off his outer robe, revealing black martial attire. This prince. Rebels! No sooner had the words left his lips than the clatter of ironclad horses echoed from beyond the peony garden. The young maidservants within the garden paled, huddling together as they gazed at Lu Qingheng with equal parts fear and awe. Humph. This dog of a man's romantic entanglements surpass even those of his past life. Is this the sort of man worth seeing? Better not to see him at all. Then the heart won't be troubled. After the Lu dynasty was overthrown, Lu Qingheng did not ascend the throne but continued as regent prince. As for the emperor, Gu Yanxi sat on the dragon throne, cradling her 1-month-old son dressed in imperial robes. Looking utterly bewildered, Lin Mu watched his wife and child on the dragon carriage with a dark expression. Had he not known Lu Qingheng and Gu Yanxi had never even met, and that the baby's features were nearly identical to his own, he might have suspected the green grassland on his head was capable of galloping horses. Of course, the looks he received from other court officials were anything but innocent. Still, I understood Lu Qingheng's decision. In my past life, Lin Mu's eldest son, Lin Ziyu, rose to the rank of chancellor. In every way, he was no less capable than my son Yi, a rare talent indeed. Once the dust had settled, on a dark and stormy night, I slipped out of Ganling. I went to the mountains to retrieve my black stallion, ready to roam the 4 seas. Before leaving, I left a note in Lu Qingheng's study. Better to forget each other in the vast world than to cling together in hardship. The end.